Despite the sensational reputation that Skinwalker Ranch has acquired over decades of speculation folklore and high-profile investigations, a rigorous scientific approach demands skepticism. Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, and while the site has produced a wealth of intriguing data from electromagnetic anomalies to aerial phenomena, none of it so far has conclusively demonstrated the presence of extraterrestrial technology, interdimensional portals, or hidden civilizations beneath the Utah desert. What the evidence does reveal is a complex interplay of natural processes, human psychology, environmental variables, and possibly advanced but terrestrial technologies, all of which together can account for much, if not most, of what has been reported. The recurring 1.6 gigahertz signal, for example, has often been cited as a potential communication beacon, an idea that, understandably, excites proponents of extraterrestrial contact, yet there are more mundane explanations worth considering. That frequency lies within the L-band commonly used for satellite communications, GPS signals, and telemetry. It is entirely plausible that the signal is a form of radio frequency interference RFI, originating from commercial satellites, passing aircraft, or even terrestrial communications relays. The variability and intermittent nature of the signal, often cited as evidence of intentional behavior, could simply reflect fluctuations in atmospheric propagation conditions or transient interference from orbiting platforms. Without precise triangulation and elimination of known sources, attributing the signal to anything beyond conventional technology remains premature. The physical anomalies detected beneath the mesa are likewise open to alternative interpretations. Ground-penetrating radar has revealed dome-like structures and vertical anomalies, while drilling has produced metallic fragments. Yet such findings, while intriguing, do not necessarily imply the presence of alien installations. Utah's geology is rich in mineral deposits including iron, nickel, and other metals that can form naturally in concentrated bands. In addition, the region's history of mining, oil, exploration, and military testing leaves open the possibility that buried debris or old infrastructure is being misinterpreted as exotic artifacts. Even the presence of materials resembling space shuttle shielding does not prove extraterrestrial origin. Such materials have been used in numerous terrestrial aerospace and defense applications over the past half-century. It is not inconceivable that remnants of experimental projects, perhaps dating back to Cold War-era military research, lie hidden beneath the mesa. The possibility of deliberate human activity is further supported by evidence of blasting along the mesa's face, suggesting that entrances to subterranean chambers may have been intentionally sealed. This is hardly unusual. Abandoned mines, tunnels, and storage chambers are frequently sealed for safety or secrecy, and without documentary evidence, attributing such actions to a cover-up of alien technology is speculative at best. Moreover, airflow detected through smoke experiments, while suggestive of voids or cavities, does not necessarily imply artificial design. Natural cave systems, lava tubes, and fissures are common in the region's geology, and the inhalation of smoke could simply indicate pressure differentials between connected voids driven by temperature or atmospheric changes. The electromagnetic anomalies reported at the site, including sudden equipment failures, GPS disruptions, and unexpected frequency spikes, can also be explained through conventional physics. Strong electromagnetic fields can arise from a variety of natural and anthropogenic sources, including subsurface mineral deposits, seismic activity, lightning strikes, and even geomagnetic storms. The presence of quartz-rich rock formations, for example, could generate localized electromagnetic emissions through piezoelectric effects when stressed by geological forces. Similarly, interference with GPS signals could be caused by multipath reflections from metallic surfaces or terrain features, not necessarily by exotic energy fields or cloaking devices. The aerial phenomena, perhaps the most dramatic and widely publicized aspect of Skinwalker Ranch, are likewise susceptible to misinterpretation. Reports of glowing orbs, pulsing lights, and fast-moving objects often coincide with rocket launches, laser experiments, or other human activities. This correlation, rather than proving a causal connection, may instead reflect the heightened attention and expectation of observers during experimental events, a well-documented psychological effect known as expectancy bias. Human perception is notoriously unreliable under low-light conditions, and many apparent anomalies from hovering lights to sudden accelerations can be explained by optical illusions, atmospheric refraction, or misidentification, mundane objects such as aircraft drones or even bright planets. The purple light phenomenon observed following rocket launches is a case in point. Atmospheric plasmas, ionized gases produced by rocket exhaust interacting with the upper atmosphere, can produce colorful glows, particularly in the ultraviolet and near-infrared spectrum. Such effects have been documented in numerous missile and rocket tests and require no extraterrestrial intervention. Similarly, coordinated lights observed in the sky after the broadcast of the 1.6 gigahertz signal may simply have been Starlink satellites, whose trains of moving lights have frequently been misidentified as fleets of unidentified aerial phenomena. Even the interference experienced by a local radio station after broadcasting the signal can be explained without invoking alien communication. Radio frequency systems are complex and susceptible to a range of interference sources, including atmospheric noise, multipath propagation, and harmonics from nearby transmitters. The observed waveform spikes may indicate nothing more than an interaction between the station's equipment and an external source, possibly even the team's own instruments. Without controlled repeatable tests under isolated conditions, drawing conclusions about intentional responses from non-human intelligences is speculative. The biological effects reported by researchers and visitors, headaches, nausea, disorientation, also fall within the realm of known science. Such symptoms are consistent with exposure to infrasound low-frequency electromagnetic fields, or even psychological stress. Numerous studies have shown that humans can experience physical discomfort when exposed to certain environmental stimuli, even at levels below conscious perception. Furthermore, the power of suggestion, particularly in a location steeped in myths of curses, portals, and shapeshifters, cannot be overstated. The nocebo effect, in which belief in a harmful environment produces real physiological symptoms, is well documented in medical literature and may explain many of the reported health episodes. It is also essential to consider the historical and cultural context in which Skinwalker Ranch operates. Stories of shape-shifting entities, glowing lights, and paths of the Skinwalker long predate modern investigations, and they reflect deeply ingrained indigenous traditions and cosmologies. While these narratives deserve respect and careful study, they also shape expectations and perceptions. The human brain is wired to seek patterns and assign meaning, particularly in ambiguous situations, a cognitive bias that can lead to the interpretation of ordinary events as extraordinary. This does not diminish the sincerity of witnesses, but underscores the need for rigorous controls and objective data collection. A further complicating factor in the study of Skinwalker Ranch is the intense media attention and sensationalism that surround it. Human perception is not a neutral instrument. It is profoundly shaped by context. When observers enter an environment already labeled as the most investigated paranormal hotspot in America, their cognitive filters are primed to notice anomalies and assign extraordinary explanations to them. This phenomenon, known as priming, is well documented in cognitive psychology. Controlled experiments have shown that individuals exposed to suggestive narratives are more likely to interpret ambiguous stimuli as significant or anomalous. Thus, even trained scientists are not immune to subtle biases when conducting fieldwork in an environment laden with expectation. Moreover, many of the experiments conducted on the ranch suffer from methodological limitations. Small sample sizes, lack of control conditions, inconsistent instrumentation, and absence of peer-reviewed data all weaken the strength of the conclusions drawn. In scientific research, extraordinary hypotheses such as the presence of extraterrestrial technology or interdimensional portals demand exceptionally rigorous evidence. Controlled replication, double-blind testing, and independent verification are essential. Until such standards are met, the anomalies observed at Skinwalker Ranch must remain intriguing hypotheses rather than established facts. The geology of the region offers further grounds for skepticism. The Uinta Basin, where the ranch is located, is geologically active and rich in unique mineral formations. Subsurface anomalies detected by radar could be explained by sedimentary layers, gas pockets, or igneous intrusions rather than artificial structures. Selenium, one of the mystery materials discovered during drilling, occurs naturally in this area, often forming as a byproduct of volcanic processes. Its presence, while unusual, is not unprecedented and does not necessarily indicate advanced cloaking technologies. Similarly, metallic fragments recovered from drilling could be remnants of old mining equipment, pipeline infrastructure, or even meteorites, all of which are common in the region and easily mistaken for exotic materials without precise isotopic analysis. The hypothesis that airflow detected during smoke tests indicates hidden tunnels or chambers also warrants scrutiny. Pressure differentials between surface and subsurface cavities can occur naturally due to temperature gradients, seasonal changes, or barometric fluctuations. These natural convection currents can create strong air movements that seem deliberate but are entirely geological. Without physical exploration of the cavities, a challenging and potentially hazardous endeavor, their nature remains speculative. Psychological factors further complicate eyewitness reports of aerial phenomena. The human visual system is notoriously unreliable, particularly under low-light conditions. Depth perception, motion tracking, and object identification all degrade in darkness, making misinterpretations common. Optical illusions such as autokinesis, in which a stationary point of light appears to move, can easily account for many maneuvering lights reported at the ranch. Additionally, atmospheric phenomena like temperature inversions, mirages, and luminous plasma discharges, commonly known as ball lightning, can produce striking visual effects that resemble intelligent behavior. These explanations, while less sensational than alien spacecraft, are consistent with known physics and should be exhausted before invoking exotic causes. It is also worth noting that much of the aerial activity documented over Skinwalker Ranch occurs in heavily trafficked airspace. Utah skies are crossed by commercial airliners, military aircraft, drones, and satellites, any of which could be mistaken for unidentified objects under the right conditions. The increasing prevalence of satellite constellations, particularly SpaceX's Starlink, has dramatically increased reports of UAP fleets around the world. Without precise tracking data, distinguishing between genuine anomalies and misidentified satellites is difficult, and in most cases, the simplest explanation is the most likely. Even the notion that the ranch's phenomena respond to human actions, drilling, launching rockets, transmitting signals, may not imply intelligence. Human interventions can disturb natural systems, triggering secondary effects that appear reactive. Drilling, for example, can release trapped gases that influence local electromagnetic fields. Rocket launches can seed the atmosphere with charged particles, altering local ionization patterns and producing transient light phenomena. Broadcasting powerful radio signals can induce interference patterns that appear as structured responses. These feedback effects are not signs of sentience, but natural consequences of complex systems interacting with human activity. None of this is to suggest that the mysteries of Skinwalker Ranch are fully explained. Some data remain puzzling, some phenomena resist easy categorization, and certain events defy current scientific models. However, the history of science is replete with examples of seemingly inexplicable phenomena that eventually yielded to mundane explanations. Ball lightning was once considered supernatural. Now it is understood as a plasma discharge phenomenon. Meteorites were dismissed as myth until they were studied and classified as extraterrestrial rocks. Even the once radical idea of continental drift was initially mocked before becoming foundational to geology. Science advances not by embracing the extraordinary prematurely, but by relentlessly pursuing natural explanations until none remain viable. It is also possible that some phenomena observed at the ranch are the result of undisclosed human technology. Classified aerospace projects often employ advanced propulsion communication and sensor systems that appear exotic to civilian observers. Stealth aircraft, directed energy systems, and electronic warfare platforms are capable of producing many of the effects reported from radar anomalies to electromagnetic pulses. The United States and other nations have a long history of testing such technologies in remote regions, often under heavy secrecy. If Skinwalker Ranch overlaps with such a test area, some of its mysteries may be more political than paranormal. Finally, while skepticism is warranted, it should not harden into dogmatism. The universe is vast, and humanity's understanding of it remains incomplete. The possibility of extraterrestrial intelligence, while unproven, is scientifically plausible. If contact were to occur, it might not take the form of radio transmissions from distant stars, but subtle interactions right here on Earth. Skinwalker Ranch could conceivably be such a site. But until conclusive evidence emerges, physical artifacts of non-human manufacture reproducible data under controlled conditions or unambiguous communication, the extraterrestrial hypothesis must remain one possibility among many. The most responsible scientific position, therefore, is one of open-minded skepticism. Skinwalker Ranch deserves continued study, but that study must adhere to the highest standards of evidence and methodology. It must be guided not by sensationalism or wishful thinking, but by the principles of falsifiability, reproducibility, and peer review. Only then can we hope to separate signal from noise and perhaps one day determine whether the mysteries of this remote mesa are the work of nature, humanity, or something beyond. In the end, the search for truth at Skinwalker Ranch mirrors the broader scientific endeavor, a journey from ignorance to understanding guided by evidence and tempered by doubt. The ranch may yet yield discoveries that reshape our view of the cosmos, but if it does, those discoveries will stand not because they are extraordinary, but because they are demonstrably true.